Welcome back, defenders. Russia lost another ship. Russian cargo ship, the Ursa Major, sinks off the Spanish coast. The vessel sank between Spain and Algeria after an engine room explosion, leaving 2 crew missing, and 14 had to be rescued. So this is the civilian cargo ship, the Ursa Major, but the Russian military has been exclusively using it the last 3 years to transport military equipment. And something happened in the engine room. There was an explosion, the ship lost power, it then began to sink. There is a video, I'll link it down below, of one of the rescue ships capturing the vessel taking on water. The video doesn't show the ship going completely down, but the ship did sink. This is where this occurred. This is Algeria, this is Morocco, and this is Spain. It was the Spanish Coast Guard that rescued these Russian sailors. Isn't it a good thing that Spain, a NATO country, is in no way hostile or aggressive towards the Russians? And they're even willing to rescue their people when their ship goes down in international waters. So this truly is a moment in time for the YouTube channel, What is Going On with Shipping? I gave them a shout out last week, but this channel is basically on fire right now. Their video from 3 days ago explaining the 3rd Russian oil tanker that sank, it already has 732,000 views. So there's a lot of people that want to know what's going on with shipping. And I'll link this video down below, this fantastic gentleman he is the expert talking about shipping on YouTube. He'll go over this oil spill in the Black Sea and how this ship went down and why. But this is a completely different ship on a different day. And the Ursa Major was basically just going back and forth between St. Petersburg, Kaliningrad, and Syria. It's been under sanctions for the last 3 years because it transports Russian military equipment. And because this ship was not loading or unloading in Western or civilized countries, it wasn't being properly inspected. So this ship was not being kept up to maintenance. It probably wasn't following safety regulations. This might be a genuine instance where Russians were smoking where they weren't supposed to smoke, and there was some kind of explosion and fire in the engine room. But the ship, most likely sailing from St. Petersburg, was going to Syria to help with the evacuation, now that Russia has to retreat back to their bases and finally leave Syria for good. So officially, this ship said it was going to Vladivostok through the Suez Canal, but that's nonsense. It was going to Syria to pick up equipment. And then, yeah, it went down. This kind of is unfortunate. I would have preferred it had loaded up first with Russian tanks and armored vehicles, and then on the way back it sank, but either way, the ship is out of commission. It can't help Russian forces in the Middle East. It can no longer help Russia's war machine, and this is the 5th ship in 2 weeks that has gone down on its own. 3 oil tankers, they're inland ships, but still crucial to Russia's shipping industry. The crane ship, and now this cargo vessel. Russia has serious problems. And since we mentioned Syria, I just want to mention this story. Assad's wife is reportedly seeking a divorce and wants to return to the UK. So Bashar al-Assad's wife, her name is Asma, and she was born in the UK. She does have British citizenship. And upon arriving in exile in Moscow, she finds her conditions in Russia to be unacceptable, and she wants to divorce her husband and return to the UK. I'm smirking. And here is Jelani. He is meeting with the Turkish foreign minister, and once again, this is a moderate jihadist. He's reformed, he's wearing a suit and tie, he's playing nice, he's working with Turkish officials to stabilize Syria, and this is something we should actually reflect on. When you look at the list of European countries by population, does Russia count as a European country? Does Turkey count as a European country. Some people farther into Europe would dispute that, but if Russia and Turkey are part of Europe, they're the two most populous nations. Russia has a population of 144 million, Turkey is 85 million, the next biggest is Germany at 83, UK at 67, and France at 64. So what I think is happening here is Russia really does not want to get into a war with Turkey. The Russian Empire and the Ottoman Empire basically went to war with each other every decade for like hundreds of years, and this is a fight that the Russians are backing down on. Turkey has laid claim to Syria. It's Turkey's chosen leader now in charge of the country, and the Russians are just accepting it. The Russians think they're too weak right now to put up any kind of serious opposition to whatever Turkey wants to do in this part of the Middle East. It's interesting. Let's now follow up on the oil spill in the Black Sea. Left to fend for themselves, volunteers step up as Russian government falters in Black Sea oil spill response. Here are the Russian slaves on the beach, filming a video begging their czar for help. I'm going to read a little bit of this for you. This is an appeal to the President and the Prime Minister of the Russian Federation. As you know, trouble has come to our house. Huge territories of beautiful sandy beaches in the Anapa and Termeryuk districts have been covered with fuel oil from tankers that have been broken apart in the sea. Local authorities do not have professional resources and special technical means to neutralize the consequences of such a large-scale disaster. They are forced to compensate for this deficiency by using volunteers with shovels. We all need to realize that we have a truly international disaster. The issues of its cleanup should not be dumped exclusively on the local government, which doesn't have sufficient resources and is forced to search for construction equipment not adapted for such works. We demand that the President and the Prime Minister, first of all, mobilize detachments of professional rescuers from around the country and fully supply them with the necessary equipment. Secondly, we provide them blah, blah, blah. They make more demands of their czar, but Putin just lost his overseas colony of Syria. I don't think he cares about oil washing up on these tourist beaches. And here is the optics. This is what the Russians want the world to see. Shovels and bags, not very efficient, but I guess they're getting the job done. Here's the problem, is that volunteers with shovels were bagging up thousands of tons of oil on these beaches, but nobody took them away. They just left them on the beach. And whether it's the tide or the wind or whatever, the water comes back on and then just washed all the bags of oil back into the sea. I'll link all these videos down below, but you can see that these bags full of oil are being washed away back into the Black Sea. Why were the bags of oil left on the beaches? And it's possible the plan was to bury the bags of oil on the beach, under the beach. Here's a Russian woman observing this happening, thinking, this doesn't make any sense.
Вот такое захоронение на Фее-3. Прямо на пляже. Показательные выступления администрации закончились. Сегодня техники, в разы меньше. ее практически нет. А за перевозим мешки. Вот так это все организовывается. Пляж Фея-3.
They're burying the bags of oil right there on the beach. There's this thing called a water table, and honestly, guys, I don't know how the Russians have made it this far. They're so incredibly stupid. And it might be because they have friends. According to the Wall Street Journal, North Korea boosts weapons supply to Russia amid deepening alliance. Satellite imagery reveals North Korea's massive expansion of weapons production facilities and increased shipments to Russia. This is the game the Russians are playing. They're going to send the money and the resources, and then North Korea is going to use slave labor to assemble more artillery shells and missiles and armored vehicles or whatever. And according to Andrei Kovalenko, a Ukrainian army officer, he's in charge of the government unit tasked with countering Russian disinformation. He claims that 60% of the artillery and mortar shells being used by the Russians today in Ukraine now comes from North Korea. North Korea's missiles now make up nearly a third of Russia's ballistic missile launches. North Korea has shipped some 20,000 containers of munitions to Russia over the last 2 years. Without the North Koreans, the Russians would have ran out of ammunition by now. Obviously, they still have their own rate of domestic production. But is North Korea outproducing Russia? Is North Korea outproducing the NATO alliance? This doesn't make any sense to me. North Korean losses in Ukraine reach about 3,000 soldiers, according to Zelensky. The North Koreans have been participating in frontline assaults the last week or so, and this is what we said, guys. Sending 10,000 guys is irrelevant because that's about a week and a half worth of casualties for the Russians. So these North Koreans are being used in meat assaults. They're not supposed to survive. They're not supposed to live. They're supposed to expose Ukrainian defensive positions so the Russians can outflank them. And apparently this was Kim Jong-un's idea. North Korean troops deployed to aid Russia was Pyongyang's idea, according to the New York Times. I just assumed that Putin wanted these troops to come to Russia as some kind of propaganda win and to scare the West of World War III. But maybe this is Kim Jong-un who wanted to do it for fun. It is called the Hermit Kingdom. He is kind of a loner. Not many people come and visit him. He doesn't get out much. So I think he did want to send these troops to Russia to expose them to combat because he thinks it's fun. He thinks it's interesting. And what are the consequences? North Korea is already the most sanctioned country in the world. We can't sanction them anymore. They already have nuclear weapons. We're not going to bomb North Korea. So yeah, Kim Jong-un's just going to do whatever he wants, and he thinks this is all hilarious. Let's now talk about some of other Russia's allies. Pro-Russian Slovak Prime Minister Fico visits Putin as Ukraine refuses gas transit. So this contract is going to expire on January 1st. Pipelines that feed gas to Moldova, Hungary, Slovakia, and probably even farther west into Austria, maybe even Serbia. I'm not sure about this pipeline network. But this is highly inappropriate for an EU or NATO member to go to Moscow to kowtow to their criminal organization. What is being paid to him, and what does he pay with? Zelensky blasts Fico after his Moscow visit to be friendly with Putin. Here's what Zelensky says. It is worth noting that after their meeting in Moscow, Fico and Putin did not issue joint statements or respond to media questions. They simply cannot say publicly anything about what they discussed in the meeting. They are afraid of the public's reaction. Moscow provides significant discounts to Fico, but Slovakia pays for them. Such discounts are not free. payments to Russia are made through sovereignty or murky schemes. This should be a matter of concern for Slovakia's law enforcement and special services. It goes on, but yeah, it's a serious problem. Serious problem that there are members of the EU and NATO who are cooperating with the Russians. For money. It's about money. There are alternatives to Russian gas, but Fico doesn't want that. He doesn't want alternatives. He likes the corruption. He likes the money laundering. He likes the integration with the Russian mafia state. Kremlin calls European gas shipments complicated after Slovak Prime Minister's visit to Moscow. Why would these pipelines continue? The contracts are going to expire. Ukraine could have and probably should have blown up these pipelines 3 years ago. But they didn't want to do that because they didn't want to distress or inconvenience the people of Central Europe who benefited from these pipelines. But this can't continue as long as Russia continues their aggression. Trump says Putin wants to meet him as soon as possible. Trump is saying and doing a lot of crazy things. This is just how he operates. He's threatening to annex Canada, Greenland, and the Panama Canal. So the general rule is ignore what Trump says, but pay attention to what he does. And concerning this clip, because this is a headline, it's actually phrased interestingly. You have to pay attention to how Trump phrases things to kind of decipher why is he saying this. So I'll play the clip first, and then we're going to break down what he actually said.
Including foreign policy, these crazy wars that we're in. One of the things I want to do, and quickly, and President Putin said that he wants to meet with me as soon as possible. So we have to wait for this, but we have to end that war. That war is a horrible. The soldiers, the number of soldiers.
Okay, so Trump said, President Putin said he wants to meet with me as soon as possible. Do you notice where the pronouns are? He's not saying, I want to meet with Putin, or Putin and I want to meet each other. That's a neutral way to say it. He's saying Putin wants to meet with me as soon as possible. There's a term in social interaction called amogging, alpha male of the group, and this is Trump bragging to his supporters that Putin is desperate to talk to him. Putin is the one in a weak position, Putin is the one needing assistance, and Trump is the one in a position of power. Trump has been amogging Putin for the last month straight, basically, and this is another example. Will Trump and Putin meet face-to-face? No, I don't think so, because where are they going to do it? Maybe they could do it in China, or they could do it in Dubai or something, but Trump's not going to Russia, and Putin can't come to any signatory of the Rome Statute, and he's certainly not going to come to Washington, D.C. or New York, so how will they meet? I don't know. Maybe they'll go to Pyongyang and they'll meet there. Trump can do whatever he wants. That's how America is going to be playing it in the beginning. Let's get to the bad news for Russia. Explosions reported near a strategic airbase in Russia's Milarovo, which is next to the Luhansk Oblast. There are pictures and videos because it's the winter solstice, it's extremely dark. We're just not getting good pictures and videos of these attacks. And here's a follow-up on the drone attack on Razan. This is the capital of Tatarstan. Russian Shahed drone parts warehouse was destroyed. The headlines were that civilian skyscraper that got struck by 2 drones, but Ukraine did successfully hit valid military targets, and Shahed drones are assembled in Tatarstan, so it's important. But here's an interesting thought from Tatarigami. In the past, a successful Ukrainian drone strike against Russian targets was seen as a major event. Today it has become almost routine, weekly event. This is a good thing. It's one of the clearest indicators that Ukraine is steadily enhancing its ability to increase the cost of war for Russia. This is the real war map, guys. It's not Russia taking a tree line or a wheat field or a destroyed village in Donetsk. It's Russia's bank account. It's their economy. We need an economic catastrophe or collapse of the Russian state in order for Ukraine to get their territory back. And truly, today, we are closer than we've ever been. Russia's in serious trouble. And every day, because of these drone strikes on oil refineries and warehouses, it just gets worse and worse. All of Russia's ships are sinking on their own. Belarus cries coup d'etat as possible prelude to new crackdown. Belarus state propaganda outlets have doubled down on early claims that the opposition is preparing to invade the country from abroad and instigate a coup. This is interesting because the US State Department, if Lukashenko wants to say something, he can say whatever he wants. But it's important to pay attention to Western intelligence, and the US State Department is urging all American citizens to leave Belarus immediately. And when this happens, when the State Department puts out an advisory, they're basically batting 1,000. The State Department has been correct about, for example, the terrorist attack in Moscow, when the State Department has issued these warnings for Americans to leave a certain city or an area. Something big has eventually happened. It's been proven almost correct each time. So Lukashenko is supposed to have an election in January. I don't know what's going to happen. I don't know what's coming. But the intelligence community is ablaze right now about something coming in Belarus. Now, it might just be Lukashenko making a show and arbitrarily arresting people, or there might be a serious movement. Belarusian dissidents, maybe in Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, or even Ukraine, planning on returning home for this election to instigate riots or civil unrest or something. Given that Bashar al-Assad just collapsed in Syria abruptly, nobody saw that coming. Yeah, I imagine Lukashenko is now feeling a bit nervous about his ceremonial election happening next month. So January of 2025, the big story might be Belarus. We'll definitely stick with it. I also want to mention civil unrest elsewhere. This is the capital city of Belgrade in Serbia. Right now, there are massive protests going on against their corrupt government. Generally, this government is pro-Russian, but they've honestly been pretty quiet the last 3 years. But this is about 30,000 protesters, mostly students and farmers, and people wanting change from their corrupt government in Belgrade. It's peaceful. People who just want real prosperity and to break away from the Russian sphere of influence. I also want to quick mention the protests in Georgia are still continuing. My favorite channel so far is this gentleman in chainmail. His name is Akko. He made a pretty good video, and I want to share the intro for it.
Hello, friends. I'm coming from you in front of the parliament, Georgian parliament, with dire news. Tyranny reigns. People are being repressed. Protests are on the streets. But true Georgian patriots fight for freedom and fight for liberty. Because that is our duty as Georgians. We have crushed many tyrannical governments. We have opposed many repressive invaders, conquerors, and evil ogre overlords. But we always prevail.
I love this guy. He actually does have a YouTube channel called The Bordeaux Show. I'll link it down below if you want to check it out. And this clip is from a 58-minute video he made for his YouTube channel, in which he breaks down and discusses what's going on in Georgia and all of the protests. So if this is something you're interested in, if you want to check out his video, check out his channel, I'll put all the links down below, but I appreciate this guy. Let's get to the good news for Ukraine. EU bank funds worth about 86 million euros are being used to create anti-drone shields around Ukraine's power grid. That's good. It's good news. Germany delivered 15 Leopard 1 tanks, 2 Patriot launchers, and additional military aid for Ukraine. Thank you so much to the German people. And it's Christmas time. So my final couple clips are Christmas related. Merry Christmas, everyone. But let me read for you Zelensky's message. For the second time, we celebrate Christmas on the same date as one big family, one country. For the second time in modern history, Christmas unites all Ukrainians. Today we stand side by side and we will not be lost. Whether in person or in our minds, we will greet each other, call our parents, kiss our children, hug our loved ones, and remember those we hold dear. In person from afar or in our hearts, Ukrainians are together today, and as long as we do this, evil has no chance. If you weren't following what happened a year or two ago, the Eastern Orthodox Church celebrates Christmas in January, but everybody on the Gregorian calendar, everybody living in the West basically celebrates Christmas on December 25th. So I guess their parliaments voted, and they agreed to not celebrate Christmas with the Russian Eastern Orthodox Church, but instead celebrate Christmas on the same day that everybody in the West does. I do want to share 2 clips. The first one is from a Ukrainian, Alexandra Povorozynsk, and this is her family Christmas dinner.
Okay, so Christmas in Ukraine. Today is Christmas Eve, so we're going to be eating 12 Lenten dishes. Here are the dishes. We have all kinds of pickle. We have vareniki with cabbage. We have sauteed cabbage. We have daruni with mushrooms. We have kutia, which is the most important Christmas dish. We have fish, potatoes, all of these great kinds of things. Merry Christmas, guys!
It's a nice looking tree. And here's some Christmas songs. I guess this would be the Ukrainian equivalent of Christmas caroling on the streets of Kharkiv.
Буде, коляд, коляд, колядниця, добра з медом паляниця, а без меду не така, дайте дядьку п'ятака. Коляд, коляд, колядниця, добра з медом паляниця, а без меду не така, дайте дядьку п'ятака. Хай ваші печалі всі підуть з водою, зичимо надалі вам щасливу долю. Коляд, коляд, колядне, радість до пирога, огірочки в банку, ще й сало шкварку. Коляд, коляд, колядна.
That's all for this update video. Merry Christmas, everyone, and glory to Ukraine, glory to the heroes. If you found this video informative, give me a thumbs up. Best way to support the channel. Comments and questions, let me know down below. I love hearing from you guys. Till the next video, keep defending the truth, keep defending democracy.